From TIDAL On Air, welcome to I'm in the Band. I'm your host, Allison, Wolfe.
I can see what you're going to say to me and fight on explaining away. I'm in the band and I deserve to be here and I do anyway.
Let's talk about shopping. Not the activity, but the post-punk queercore band based in London and Glasgow. Shopping isn't the easiest name to Google, but they've got a lot to say.
I'm fascinated by the things you get away with. We live through your perfect face. You make me want to say, let's never be tied to anything.
Their new album, The Official Body, was produced by post-punk pioneer Edwyn Collins of the Glaswegian band Orange Juice. While touring their new album, Shopping hit Los Angeles, and we brought them into the studio.
Studio apartment.
There's a bedroom, technically. They all met in the London DIY scene, and not only clicked musically, but also politically. Or your full name or whatever.
Hey, I'm Billy Easter. I play bass and I sing in Shopping.
I'm Andrew Milk. I play the drums and sing as well.
And I'm Rachel Aggs, and I play guitar and also sing.
I was curious how they all got into alternative culture in the first place.
When I was a kid, I listened to like the same hippie music that my parents liked. You know, I listened to like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. I was just a weirdo. I didn't think of it as alternative culture, I just thought of it as music. And then like, it took me a while to come around to the idea of punk.
Did you think about anyone? My heart is sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
I remember thinking punk was like Green Day. I was like, oh no, I don't like punk music. Like, I kind of got more into like jazz and weird, like experimental, like noise stuff when I was studying art. And then through that, discovered like Riot Girl and like fun stuff that I could really identify with. I grew up in the countryside. And also I went to a boarding school, so even the times when you would normally do fun stuff, like after school or at the weekend, I was still at school. So I wasn't going to shows. I wasn't actually like meeting any real people.
I grew up in quite a small town around London, about an hour's north. I was just really into R&B music, which for, you know, a ginger white kid in the suburbs was, I guess, alternative. I didn't know anyone else that was into R&B and hip-hop. And when I discovered Riot Girl when I was like 20 at uni, thanks to like Last FM, just this never-ending kind of like rabbit hole of like Riot Girl and then queercore and then all of these queer and femme musicians that I found very, very, very exciting. Everything else around that, I just didn't get. Green Day, like Slipknot or whatever, Nirvana, Melvins, like I just was like just angry men, like don't get it.
You're like, why are you angry? You don't have anything to be angry about. Straight white guys, like what?
But then queercore, I was like, yeah, I get this. I understand where this anger's coming from, and like I get on board with that.
When I found like some bands who were actually singing about stuff that like I could identify with, it's like, oh cool. And then you're like, oh, maybe I should do this. This could help me express some of this shit.
My journey was slightly different because I'm a little bit older than these two. And there was no internet. I liked kind of what my mum listened to and stuff like that, which was like Tina Turner and like Roxy Music. And it's funny, like, talking about punk and stuff. So, you know, when I was very young, it was the dawn of punk or whatever. And I remember being, like, in a supermarket with my mum and, like, seeing some, like, you know, full-on punks with, like, Mohicans and stuff and just being, like, in awe. I was like, who are they? Like, I want to be like that. I got expelled from school and then I went to another school and I was kind of alienated and I left home when I was, like, 17. I sort of like ran away and moved to London and I found a whole crew of people who were all kind of like freaks basically. It was sort of based around this this fleeting scene called Romo. Don't know if you remember that. Probably don't. It was quite UK centric. But it was just like a load of freaks, just anyone and everyone. And then like I used to go to this club every week called Smashing and it was just, I guess, like artists and musicians who were doing like really weird music. In like Jarvis Cocker used to go, so everyone from Pulp was there, and like all of Menswear used to go. Do you remember Menswear? And then, like, you know, a lot of those bands were involved in that, and I just found my people.
Several of our interviewees have talked about coming out and how music helped them do that, like you guys just did, but also about how music being a safe space, but then it isn't always, right? You know, and so I don't know if you guys wanted to address any of that, or Billy, if you'd like to tell more of your own story with that.
In my experience anyway, like, people weren't really talking about sexuality, they were just being who they were. And I didn't feel a huge amount of pressure to come out or anything. And I didn't really. I did, but I didn't. It was great. It was a really great experience for me. You know, we did know that we were, like, stepping out of society, and we would get looked at in the street because we all looked kind of crazy. But it wasn't as kind of thought about as I feel like it kind of is now, you know? I get asked a lot more questions now about how I identify and stuff like that, and I didn't back then. But I mean, maybe I was just wasted and I didn't notice. Who knows?
Yeah, that's like the opposite of my experience.
Yeah, I was
like
really
desperately trying to find some people that I could hang out with. For me, a huge part of it was coming out. It was a huge thing for me because I went straight from school to university, and I studied in Oxford, which is like a really uptight scene, like very, very straight. I think there was like an LGBT society or something, but even that was just like, I just couldn't see myself being like able to like walk into a room with like a load of people I have nothing in common with and be like, I'm gay, like, because it just wasn't inviting or open. And I remember like meeting my first girlfriend, and like they were wearing like a bikini kill patch on their cap, and like music was always really a huge part of like me coming out and like meeting other people like that were queer. So I think that's also a big part of it.
I think that's true a bit for me as well. Like, I'd already come out, but I wasn't like completely comfortable with just being myself, especially among new people. And I was like at university, kind of like tentatively telling some people, not being like, "Hi, I'm Andrew, I'm gay." You know, maybe at the end of uni, I was much more happy just to do that.
I also would like to know how you guys each got into playing music. Like, how did you transition into thinking that you could actually do this too?
Well, I'm really lucky because I grew up playing music, and I've been playing music since I was like, before I can remember, basically. I was like 3 or something when I first started playing. And I played with my family because my dad played guitar and he was in some folk bands. So I was always playing with him, and like we would play out in pubs and stuff sometimes. I remember like my first gig, I think I was 7, and like it was a huge deal. I remember like how good it felt and just being like, I want to do this all the time. But it took me ages to think I could play electric guitar, because like that was such a thing that was way too cool for me. I didn't think I was cool enough to do that. And it was definitely through listening to like weird experimental like noise stuff when I got more into art, because I was making loads of art. My parents are both artists as well, and then it was like, oh, you can like do art on the guitar, cool. Like I can just make noise.
And how about the rest of you, Andrew?
Yeah, it was just all thanks to the internet. Like, going to university, really becoming a massive geek around riot girl and queer punk. Decided to start putting on shows in Maidstone that no one asked for and no one wanted to attend. But I had a great time. I lost a lot of money. Just would pay bands to come from London down to Maidstone. I just go to a cash point and just give them £100 and like get them to play in the cafeteria of the uni. And like some people would come, most people would be really bewildered by it, stand around looking a bit in awe, and I would have the best time. That's kind of how I found like a scene of people that I found really encouraging and helped me to realise that what I really wanted to do was to play music. I didn't want to just facilitate people to play gigs. I actually wanted to be really selfish and have the spotlight and get an instrument and have people look at me and listen to me, and yeah, that all sounded great. But I didn't pick up an instrument until I was like 24.
Billy, how about you?
I did. Started a band when I was in school. We got as far as making T-shirts. That was it. And then when I was maybe like 20, I bought a bass guitar and never played it, and then it got stolen from my flat. And then I kind of forgot about it all. And then my friend Sarah, who's in a band called Wet Dog, the bassist was leaving the band and they asked me to join. They taught me the songs and then I found it quite intuitive.
They teach us procrastination. They teach us indecision. What we're learning. Procrastination. We're learning.
Another thing I wanted to ask you guys was about the UK DIY community and scene. It seems really strong right now. There's lots of super politicized progressive people in the mix doing a lot of cool things, probably with little or no money. How tied to the community are you? I know that Andrew, you did like a record label and put on shows and stuff still, right?
Yeah, and currently I'm doing, it's like a collective of people I'm involved in called Spite House that put on queer and feminist identified bands in Glasgow.
And do you guys feel like you're strongly participating in a community? Is the community essential to what you're doing?
I think it is in that we wouldn't be a band without it. Like, we wouldn't have met without that community. And we still are very much a part of it. But I think now what we're trying to do is a little bit different. Like, coming here and, like, touring a lot sort of takes us out of our immediate community and puts us in more of, like, a global community of people making music and doing similar things to us.
Well, and what about these spaces like Power Lunch?
Yeah, Power
And-
Lunches. That was
Power
when that
Lunches.
existed. That was a lot more like a sort of hub community.
A microcosm.
Yeah. We all like worked there, hung out there, went to shows there, went to parties there, had lock-ins there. It was a really fun time, and the spores of that are part of what's going on now.
Why did it stop?
It was just far too beautiful to live. It lasted as long as it could. The space was in Dalston, which even in the 4 years that Power Lunches existed had changed like immeasurably, getting more and more expensive and much more gentrified. And yeah, they hated us. The landlord really didn't like us being there. We had flats above that was always a bit tricky. People moving in and moving out constantly, and like, you know, moving into the flats above a venue in London's capital for nightlife and then complaining about noise. You know, the classic, like, you get someone moving into above the venue and being like, oh, I didn't realise it was going to be this loud. Oh, I wanted to be in the city but like not actually hear it. It ran for those 4.5 years just until the lease was up, and then we had to go, couldn't make it work anymore. It was just too much to battle against.
Do you think that DIY Space for London is a offshoot of Power Lunches?
Yeah, I'd say it's set up by lots of people who used to come to Power Lunches and some people who worked there. But I would say it's a slightly different type of setup in that they really have their shit together. They are organised and they're trying to do it very much above board. Whereas Power Lunches had this feel to it that it was like kind of rolling,
It was
you
pretty
know.
rogue.
Yeah, it was like chaotic, and we were just like trying to see how long we could get away with it.
You're taking a new life. You've won without a single shot fired alone. Yeah, you played it right. We never had the truth. We read the sign. New value.
When I look at some of the titles of your songs and some of the lyrics, it seems pretty politicized. Could you just speak to some of the themes in your songs, or just what's important to you as a band to put out into the world?
We never discussed political agenda, but I'm very happy that what we are saying is something that when I was 18 I would have been looking for. Just hearing voices that are like unabashedly talking about queer, feminist and personally political subjects.
And the fact that we're called Shopping, it was really fun to like pick that name and then be like, oh, we can write so many songs about like money and like how to survive in the world, because like it can be so controlling. But like the songs that I love are about breaking out and, you know, maintaining, you know, so this life force that keeps you going. Like music is that to me. It's like medicine. It's like cathartic.
Yeah. We're definitely saying certain things, like comments on like modern life and society, but we're not pointing the finger because we're involved. It's frustrating, and there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and We're in a really lucky position that we can write music that can convey those frustrations and people are listening and identifying.
Well, I love the band name Shopping. I mean, yeah, it does seem to be kind of poking at capitalism and consumer culture and all that, of course. How do you deal with that? Because, yeah, if you live in a capitalist society, yet you're anti-capitalist, like, what do we do with that?
I think we're trying to say, like, to comment on capitalism as a band is always, like, awkward because you're saying, like, capitalism is crushing us, but then you're like, buy our record, you know?
And we are so rich as a result of being in this band, you know. We are just
No,
like...
but you know what I mean? Like, we're acknowledging that, like, people need to buy stuff from each other in order to survive.
We're not saying that we have the answers. We're posing questions, but we're also, our tongue is firmly planted in our cheek. We're taking the piss out of ourselves, as well as the situation that we're in.
On the upside, I have, I think, done a lot less shopping since being in shopping.
Oh, okay.
I kind of hate shopping now.
Wow.
You sure? We've been to CVS quite a few times on this tour.
No, it's boring. It bores me to
We do
tears.
love CVS.
Sponsored by CVS. No,
I see you staring straight over me. I see you staring so vacantly.
I think about my own bands and how it's always been super DIY, Punk Damage, and we've always kind of felt successful if we broke even. But how do you survive as a band? How do you make it work?
Well, I play in like 3 different bands, so at the moment that is what's happening. So like I'm sort of getting by because I have incomes from different things and I play music and record music all the time. And also like one of my bands won a prize and we got a bunch of money, so like I'm trying to make that last for as long as possible.
Was that the Scottish
Yeah.
Music Awards?
Yeah. So that was cool, but you know, it's hard. Yeah.
you gotta have another income.
I don't really know anyone that just does one band and survives off it. It's really difficult. Streaming and publishing, all these, there's other ways that we've been trying to figure out, but you have to be really smart or have a manager or something.
You just gotta know the right people.
You really need
There's
to
a lot
know
of
what you're doing. It's
nepotism.
hard, yeah. But it's kind of, there's this feeling that there is money somewhere. You just access it, you know?
There's ways, but
Yeah.
it's like a secret
Yeah, very
society.
secretive. People are so secretive about
People will not necessarily let you know those ways. You know?
I think like something that I've noticed happening very recently to me, I guess since I like won an award that is prestigious in a, you know, it's culturally valid in this way that nothing I've done in the past has really been viewed as. Yeah, people sort of like, oh, were you not a member of this royalty? Like, why don't you get this and this? And you're like, no one ever told me about that. Like, I don't understand how everyone is going around knowing about these things because, you know, I didn't go to music college or whatever, wherever people get this knowledge from. I don't hang out with like straight white men that talk about this kind of stuff. Like,
And we
I
don't have
just
managers,
never
so-
knew. Yeah, like I'm punk. But that's that, and I'm proud of that. But at the same time, it's like, oh, we should find out about this stuff because otherwise, the only people getting money are the people making really boring music. So, yeah.
Yeah, every now and then I'll go to these power lunches, but I'll meet all these like music industry people, and I realize they're all making money off of all of us, and they make way more than I ever will. It's so fucked.
Yeah.
It's not fair. It's ridiculous. And yeah, it's hard to keep on top of it, how to like get your dues.
No, I understand. And I also, when we were at South by Southwest, it really made me think about big business, like, and how much they need us to sell their shit and their products. You never really think about that when you're just writing a song. Or it's easy to just think like, oh, this isn't really worth anything. Like, it's just my stupid song. But like, it really is. I don't know. I obviously knew that. I just the dots connected in a serious way when we were in Austin.
Music is great, Rachel.
And what is it that like stopping you from seeing the value that all of these people are like getting out of your music?
Like we were saying, it's important for us to align ourselves with punk and with marginalized people that are creating music because that's where we come from. That's who we are.
Yeah, just because
Difficult.
something's punk or like made by marginalised people doesn't mean it doesn't have value.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the most valuable.
Yeah.
So voices that are like less heard should be treasured as like the most valuable form of expression. That's the stuff that we need to hear that we don't hear enough of. Not like the fucking same old bollocks that's been going on for like 50 years or whatever.
I mean, I don't want to like do a big complaining thing, you know what I mean? Because we've got it kind of good. We get to travel far and wide and play our music to people. And that feels like success to me, you know? I think probably we could be earning more money. That would be great. This is a full-time job for us, and I think we should be paid like it's a full-time job.
I also feel like we're doing really well, but I just feel like there's like a trend in various companies and media outlets to like cherry pick queer musicians or musicians of color and stuff and interview them or use them to sell their products, and that worries me as well, because you know, people suddenly think, oh, I'm going to be on the cover of this thing, and then they're like, oh, but why? Why now? Oh, okay, is it because I'm marginalized? Like,
Well, we have had some of our interviewees talk about how other, like, I guess mostly straight white boy bands are making a lot more money than they are, yet every article for a festival or whatever that they might be playing, even though they're not making very much, they're the face of it. Like, they're the picture that goes in the papers or on the festival flyers or whatever. And it's like, stop using my image if you're not going to fucking pay me.
Yeah,
you know?
yep, definitely.
It's a problem.
Discover this Tuesday you're lonely and desperate.
I'd like to know any experiences you guys have had within the music industry, maybe when you're playing a show, any time that people haven't taken you seriously or said fucked up shit to you or whatever.
So many.
What about that? There was that guy.
Oh
that was
my
like,
god, I had a really good one the other day.
Oh.
Like it was just a guy who was trying to compliment me, and he came up and said like, "Oh, you're so good at the guitar. I almost thought you were a dude." And I was like, "Wow, did you just say that?" And he was like, "Oh, sorry. I mean," and I was like, what did you?" I'd got him to repeat it a couple of times because I just couldn't really believe it. And then he just like evaporated. And people were like, "Oh no, you should be pleased they said that." And I'm like, I don't think so, because I think what he meant was, you know, I thought you were a dude.
I feel I've been pretty well listened to, be like a white European man. So nothing springs to mind, but I do get a lot of, you know, sound techs talk to me first about stuff that's not to do. I'll be setting up a drum kit and someone will ask me about an amp. I'll be like, I don't know. I'm clearly not the person to ask.
Yeah, I think sound guy issues are probably my biggest. Just general dismissiveness.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're quite oblivious a lot of the time
I mean, yeah.
because you just zone it out. I mean, I don't really care, you know,
Yeah.
what they think. I just want to get the job done. I want to sound good, and it's like, you've got to do my sound. Just do it.
Name yourself, create yourself, control yourself, and own yourself. Name yourself, create yourself, control yourself, and own yourself. Why not treat yourself?
I love your new record. And I noticed on the cover there is some kind of alligator or crocodile shadow in a pool. How did it get there?
It was just a photo I took, and when I took it, I was like, I really like this image. It was going to be this kind of turquoise lake with this kind of mountain in the background, all these fir trees. I wanted to put a pink lilo on the lake and then put a lettuce on the lilo. I don't know why. This, to me, was the perfect album cover for something called The Official Body. But we then got word that we needed the album artwork, like, tomorrow. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to pull that off. And went through my photos, and then I was like, oh, that one. That actually works just as well for this. And then it was the easiest album artwork we've ever done. I was like, what about this? And the other two were like,
cool.
yeah, okay.
So let's talk about the new album, Official Body. So what's up with the title and the songs? What's going on there? What's the theme? What's the idea?
We're thinking about received ideas of anything, but in particular bodies, you know, like queer bodies, brown bodies, like fat bodies. Just thinking about like what's seen as deemed as appropriate or acceptable.
It's a bit humorous, like because on the front cover, obviously we've got like a giant alligator shadow. It's like that's another double meaning as well. It's like it's sinister, but it's also kind of hilarious that this is like this body, this like crazy inflatable thing, but it's also the shape of an alligator. It's also a bit scary and intimidating. Yeah.
It's full of air. You could just burst it.
Yeah.
Exactly. We just need to burst it, and then it'll be fine.
It's a hollow,
pop it.
hollow concept. It's a hollow-
Also, inflatables, you know, your general image of like a beautiful body lying on a... We call them lilos. I don't think you call them lilos here. But
What's a lilo? Can you explain
it's
to
a
the
pool
US audience?
Yeah,
inflatable.
it's the thing
What do
you
you call
lie
it?
on the pool drinking your margarita.
That alligator thing. You would lie on it in a pool. It's called a lilo.
What would you call that here?
Floaty? Or what do you
Floaty.
call it? A floating
The
device.
Kind of floating bed.
That sounds
but
bad.
So I
don't
think we
think
should
we
give
would.
you this word, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah, okay.
lilo. That is what it's called.
As ambassadors of the UK, gift you the word lilo.
And,
Use
you
it as
know,
you wish.
You must have a very beautiful body to lie on a lilo, or one must not do it. And you must have a cocktail in hand.
You push a limit, you cross a line, you name a price like it's fine. Will you remember the passing time? And would you notice if I was suddenly gone?
There's a song on your album that's called Suddenly Gone. And I think there's a lyric in there that says something like, would you notice if I were gone? I don't know what that was referring to, but it kind of struck us.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, any person that feels undervalued or underappreciated, thinking about like, oh, imagine if like all the brown people that make fucking amazing music just stopped, or if it never happened, like music history and the people who write about the canon of rock music, or, you know, just to have often failed to recognize like black musicians' contributions to like the beginnings of rock and roll or punk. And so it's just like a fantasy of like, imagine if like we just all stopped and how crippled everyone would be. But also just like all of us as like queers as well, thinking about like queer dance music and disco, and there's these really under historicized or underrepresented like histories and forms of music.
Yeah, could you guys speak to kind of the importance of representation and why it's important that you guys are on stage and you're visible in what you're doing and how that might affect others? And then maybe also how others have affected you in the same way.
I feel really proud to be on stage and be like queer and a person of color and a female identifying person that doesn't necessarily present like in a conventional way. I know how important that was to me as a kid, and how few people there were on stage that looked like me. And so polystyrene was like a huge, just listening to like X-Ray Specs was like, I want to start a band, like this is so cool. I finally like found a person that looks like me and is weird and interesting.
My mind is like a plastic bag.
I hardly knew any other people of color making the kind of music I was. On this tour in particular, I've tried to make a point of almost every show dedicating a song to the punks of color in the audience. Even if I don't talk that much about it, because I sometimes find it quite overwhelming to talk to like a majority white audience about that. But even just mentioning it, like people come up to me afterwards and say thank you, and it's just so cool.
I can't say that I can understand the experiences that Rachel has. I'm not a person of colour, but from my perspective of being like a queer person, visibility is like incredibly important. And it's the whole reason that I got into music, and like what I was saying about discovering queercore and Riot Girl. If I hadn't heard queer people singing about their frustrations and discomforts, just even basic stuff like magnetic fields, like love songs that are just a man singing to a man or whatever, all of that stuff is really, really important. It was having those voices that resonated so deeply within me that I had to become more invested in culture and be a creator of culture, not just like a passive consumer.
Billy, you got anything to say on that?
I feel like grateful that I feel I can get on stage and play music to people, because I'm quite a self-conscious person. I judge myself a lot, the way I look, just in the way that people do. But I feel like I can get on stage and play to people, I don't feel like I have to conform to anything to do that. I don't have to look like a beautiful woman. I don't care. I don't give a shit. You know, as a woman in music, a lot of the time, you've got to have something else going on. Like, you've got to be sexy, appealing to this and that and whatever. And somehow, from somewhere, even though I have a lot of self-critical thought, when I'm doing that, it all kind of goes away and I don't care.
People who look weird or feel weird in their bodies are often the best performers, because it takes so much to get on stage to overcome that you just, by the time you're on stage, you just don't care. You're just like literally like a ball of energy, and you're not even pausing to do your hair in between songs, you know, because it's not an issue. And that's what makes you a good performer, and I think that's a really exciting thing for me, and that's why that kind of visibility is really important.
This is such a simple thing. You don't like me, I don't look like you. You can show me anything you want. It's a slow race and I'm out in front.
Even people like maybe you wouldn't expect to inspire someone like me, like someone like D Boon from Minutemen. I was like, oh, this guy's like really fat and he's having a great time on stage. Like, this is so cool. Like, I think that kind of thing is really, really important to me, actually, to see people just freaking out and being really weird and looking really weird. Not in like a cool, weird way, like actually
Not
weird.
looking like how you're meant to look.
So, Shopping, the band. Thank you so much for sitting on my couch and talking for a couple hours.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm in the Band is produced by me, Allison Wolfe.
And me, Jonathan Shifflett.
You can hear all of our episodes on TIDAL On Air and follow us at I'm in the Band Podcast.